Hello people of the internet, this is Kaiju Noir, here with my review for Gappa the Triphibian monster, also known as Monsters from a Prehistoric Planet, here in America. Our story begins on the South Seas, where a team of reporters and university scientists are traveling to the volcanic island of Obelisk in search of rare and exotic plants and animals. Among this crew, we have the lead scientist Tanoka, played by Yuji Okada, news reporter Kurosaki, played by Tamio Kawaji, and news photographer Koyanagi, played by Yoko Yamamoto. The reason for this expedition is because their boss, Funazu, played by Kisuke Inoi, is the publisher of Playmate magazine, who wishes to open up a tropical resort/zoo to commemorate the magazine's 50th year of publication. When our protagonists arrive at their destination, they encounter the natives, portrayed by the most offensive use of blackface in a Japanese film since King Kong vs. Godzilla. Eventually, Kurosaki and Koyanagi are led by a young native boy to a large statue against a mountain representing their god Gappa. Once an earthquake rocks the island, the statue is knocked over, revealing a hidden entrance into the mountain. By the time they meet up with Tanoka and the rest of the crew, they find a large egg in the cave. After a baby Gappa hatches from said egg, Tanoka assumes that the parents have been dead for millions of years, and that the egg has been incubating all that time.
That don't make no sense!
Eventually, they decide to take the baby Gappa with them to Japan, against the islanders' wishes. Unfortunately for everyone, the Gappa's parents are indeed alive and well, and quickly begin their march towards Japan in hopes of retrieving their child. Now, after listening to that plot synopsis, you're probably thinking that it sounds a bit too familiar. Well, you'd be right to think so, as Gappa the Triphibian monster lacks a single original bone in its body. This movie borrows elements from several monster movies, most noticeably Gorgo with its kidnapped child angry parent plot. That's right, we have a rip-off of a rip-off. Other stolen elements include an exploration team investigating a tropical jungle in search of rare wildlife, seen in both The Lost World and King Kong. There's a greedy corporate boss that exploits a certain creature for money, seen in Mothra. The natives themselves have been seen in both King Kong and Mothra. There is a bit of a love triangle between the three protagonists, one of whom is a scientist, something seen in Godzilla. And finally, the monsters themselves are a blatant mishmash of Godzilla and Rodan. They even have a blue-colored breath attack. It's like this movie is a giant vortex that has sucked up numerous films in order to make their original ideas its own. It's interesting to note that this movie was originally going to be a parody, or satire, of kaiju films, but was changed into a straight-up serious monster movie at some point in its development. This would explain why there are so many familiar elements in the film. If it was indeed going to be a parody, then I would understand the use of them, similar to how Gehara was made. However, if you're supposed to be making an original film made to compete with the likes of Godzilla and Gamera, then there is no excuse to be that lazy and blatantly plagiarize the very films you're competing against. Out of all the kaiju films I have reviewed, this one probably features the worst cast of characters I've ever seen. I mean, sure, the cast of films such as Reptilicus and the X from Outer Space weren't that memorable, but at least they didn't do anything to get me so riled up. Tanoka is once again that stereotypical no-nonsense leader figure, although this time around he's more of an unsympathetic jerk. He's perhaps the closest thing to being a likable character. However, he is characterized as a villain for wanting to study the baby Gappa, rather than giving it up to the company or its parents later on because he's in it for the fame. Kurosaki is characterized as an inconsiderate and sexist jerk who admits that he is just as selfish as Tanoka. Koyanagi is perhaps the most pathetic character in the film, and is a significant downgrade from Lisa in terms of female protagonists in kaiju films. She can't even make up her damn mind to save her life, always having to rely on either Tanoka or Kurosaki. By the end of the movie, she finally makes the decision to quit her job because she realizes that she's an ordinary woman who should get married and raise children. Yes, you heard me. She purposely wants to stop being a career woman so that she can become a stereotypical housewife. Now, in terms of special effects, they share the same problems as the X from Outer Space in that they are decent, but unoriginal and boring. What really kills the Gappa's destruction sequences is that most of their scenes are shot showing their whole bodies. You see, when the entire body is in full frame for the majority of the time, with no special camera angles or lighting, it starts to ruin the illusion that these are giant monsters and not guys in suits. As for the suits themselves, they aren't anything to praise about other than that I like the sexual dimorphism between the parents. I have already said how the Gappas look like a cross between Godzilla and Rodan, but I have yet to mention how lousy their wings look. Unlike the wings on real-life vertebrate animals, which have about 3 joints, the Gappas appear to have only 1. They look like 2 giant fans that were stapled to their backs. The baby Gappa looks like a creepy-looking Muppet and has an ear-shattering squeal. How is it that every time a live-action creature is made to look cute, it always ends up something that ends up haunting me in my nightmares? Whenever Japanese monster movies come up in a conversation, Gappa the Triphibian monster is one that rarely comes up. Unlike movies like Godzilla, Mothra, or Gamera, which each display their own unique strengths and weaknesses, Gappa tries to steal them in order to gain any sort of notoriety. However, by trying to copy as many elements as it can, it ends up lacking its own identity. With no distinct qualities to call its own, it's merely a shallow imitator deserving of a 1 out of 5. It may not be the worst monster movie I've ever seen on a technical level, but in terms of story, characters, and monsters, it ends up being a complete waste of time for anyone interested in kaiju films. Unless you have the need to watch every single Japanese monster movie ever made, then please do yourself a favor and skip it. Until next time, everybody, take care.